What's up, guys? Jordan from Bennett's Customs. We're back on another episode. On this episode, we're on the Roadster, and what I'd like to try to achieve is getting the radius rods shortened and fitted, the drive shaft cut and shortened as well, and fitted, pin in, making sure everything is going to line up as it should. And then what I'd like to try and do is get the 39 backing plates on, our new drums. I need to press the old hubs out of the old drums and get those ones fitted. And then we can kind of basically have everything assembled almost enough to be able to put tires on. Unfortunately, I don't have studs, wheel studs, so I need to order a set of those. But for now, at least we can kind of get a loose mock-up. So yeah, bit of, there's going to be a bit of fabricating and some stuff to do on this. So I just want to make sure we just get this buttoned up. I've found a few more leaves up in my little leaf spring kind of area, and I found some that I can use for the top, which is really good. Hopefully more parts show up today that we need for kind of front shackles and a few other bits and bobs. So then that way we can get the front end together as well. And hopefully by the end of this week, we can have this thing rolling, which would be really, really exciting. So still haven't really decided what I'm going to do down here yet as well. As you can see, these 32 mounts and the water pump where your hose is going to come off of and go to the radiator, it hits and makes contact to the stud and the nut. If I were to kind of stick it on there like that, that's just a different style nut, but there's just not a lot of clearance. And to be very honest, I think it would be quite nice to just like make a set that comes off here. But for now, I'm gonna leave it, maybe change it down the road. I'll see how I feel. But yeah, one area that I'm not too sold on quite yet. I was able to score a bracket for the right-hand drive pedals, which is exciting. So when that shows up, I'll show you and tell you who I got that from. But yeah, so first things first, I need to kind of gauge a bit of an idea, do some measurements, making sure I'm going to shorten the radius rods to the right thing. A couple different options with this as well. A few people had mentioned in our previous video, why wouldn't you just move this up here and have, this closer, which is totally a great point. I could fabricate another one that drops down because this is tapered. So this is running the same plane, like this actually bolts straight up to that. So if I were to move it any closer where this taper is, I'd have to lengthen this down in order to have this in, or, we could kind of pinch and pull them up and stuff like that. So the option is definitely there, but what I like about this setup, essentially this is stock if these were to go back to here, like proportions for the front part of this. Even though we've shortened it, but the front part would be the same. So what I'm thinking, I'm totally thinking out loud on this. So what I'd like to probably do is leave this where it is, in the factory location. It's already welded on. I don't have to worry about anything. And then I can just alter these radius rods to fit there. And that's still a fair amount of, obviously you like to try and keep these things as close as you can, but yeah, that's where they originally were. So I think I'm just going to do that. I've just talked myself into it. So now I'm going to do it. So let's, we'll get you set up on the tripod, and we will start to make some measurements and get into this. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. Hit that notification button as well, so you're alerted when we come out with excellent videos. So before we do the radius, arms, I'm gonna finish doing the drive shaft. So I need to go and shorten this. So same thing, we're gonna scribe a line so I know where everything's gonna go, take out our section, and then I may have a look inside and see if I have something that I could kind of sleeve it, and then we can re-weld it, or I'll just butt weld it together and pray to God it holds in place. And to be honest, probably with these hollow ones, not the solid section, the solid earlier shafts so much, but I don't know, it probably would be better to try and do this, face it on a lathe, and then try and get it balanced, because I don't really know if this is going to work as well as like my other ones, but I'll give it a crack and I'll give you some feedback if it doesn't. But I'm just going to try and, yeah, if I scribe a line, fingers crossed, if I'm just taking out a bit of material, maybe it'll work, who knows. We'll give it a crack. All right, so what I did there was just use a marker, and it just gave me a little bit more of an area where I could scribe and I could see it. So as long as I know when this dries and I go to shorten this, if I line that line back up, everything should be kind of back to stock proportions other than the length of it. All right, so I've done some measurements, and it looks like if I were to take the exact same amount out of this that I did to the other one, everything should line up. So it's again, I took 435 mil from this existing one, and we are gonna do the exact same on the inside. So rather than doing it dead center, I'll probably try and keep it towards the rear. I'm just thinking torque-wise. Maybe, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. So what I'm gonna do is try and keep it as close to the taper as possible, but still have enough meat where I can make a little jig to make sure that these will get clamped together. So I'll probably come in, say, yeah, maybe like 150 mil. So we'll make our first cut there, and then we'll take this section out, bring that down, then we still have a nice bit of meat where everything's still at the same plane, where we can then clamp it in and make some multiple tacks all the way around, and then we'll try and strategically weld this in sections so that we're not going to distort it too much, and you know, fingers crossed, we just put it in and everything will work and it handles my heavy foot. So we'll see how it all goes. You know, it's all trial and error, these things. That's what hot rodding is. Bit of fun, you know, cut stuff, weld it, fingers crossed it all works out. All right, so we're back over Liam's workshop using his awesome cold saw. So you can see that this is the bit that goes on down onto the pinion, and you can't quite see it. If I can get some light shining in there, there's a lot of scale in there. So these need to be cleaned out big time. Basically just from water sitting down at the bottom of it. So we'll get these cleaned up. I'm gonna bevel the edges, and then we'll just do a light mock-up, see how everything's gonna fit together. So what I need to do, here's both ends of my drive shaft. These I can put together. I could put this in a jig and I could just weld that and I would probably be happy with it. But just for peace of mind, I would love to sleeve it. Unfortunately, trying to find something that slides in with, you know, just a tolerance fit or just under is super hard, especially with something with a seam in it. The internal diameter of this is 65.5 mil, I believe, from memory. So what I'm gonna do is I've just trimmed off 100 mil of the piece, like our excess piece that we don't need anymore. It was scribed before with our nice line. So I used that, I cut it, and then what I did was use our calipers and I trimmed 5 mil off. So I just run it like that, made a scribe line, trimmed 5 mil off. I'm just using an exhaust clamp. This is a 67 mil one, so it'll get it close enough. And this pulls it in really tight. So I just had that on, pulled it tight, went to measure, and it's just off by a little bit. So what I think I'll do is I'll probably take off maybe another 5 mil. I'll run a scribe line. So there's our 5 mil line right along there. And then I'm just gonna hit this with the grinder. We'll put this back in the clamp, pull it down and see if it slides in. So now what I'll do, I'll put my clamp back on there, try and get it even in the center. Should be good enough. Might have to throw this in the vise just to get it connected, which I will do. All right, so we got it on there. I'm just gonna tighten these up. And this should essentially pull it up relatively round. It probably won't be perfectly round because you're just taking it out of one side, but it should be very close. All right, so that is clamped down. It's nice and square. And doesn't quite fit, but it's very close. I reckon it needs a blade, a cutoff wheel width, 1 mil, and that thing will slide on in there perfectly. So I'll remove this again. We'll trim a little bit off, and then we'll try and set it in there. And remember that there is a seam in there too, so either you can kind of grind it out and then put this in so you don't have to worry about it, or you just want to make like a tiny small little groove in this just for the seam to sit in. However you want to do it. I will most likely probably do a line in this so I don't have to sit there and grind that seam out. But all right, so I got both clamps on there, and what I've done is I've just internally tacked it so it's not going to move. And then I'm just gonna fuse this here on both sides, and I can pull these clamps off, clean it all up, and then I can press this down into the inside of the drive shaft. All right, so while that's cooling down, I'll just grab you, show you. It's just tacked on the inside. That is warm. What I'm gonna do, I know that this is 100 mil long, and it's gonna go inside about 45 mil, and I'm gonna leave a little bit of gap. So when I go to weld these together, I actually get a bit of this as well as both sides here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run about a 25 mil scribe line all the way around, and that is where I'm gonna plug, or it'll be an area where I can actually plug weld. So, and then I can drill 4 holes in each one, and then when I slide that sleeve in, I can then weld that sleeve inside these. All right, so there's my 25 mil each side. So then those will go in. I'll have holes drilled here. This piece will sit inside there, and then we can weld it. So I'm probably going to scribe right on our line because I know that that's our top. So I'll go ahead and put this in the drill press. I'll drill straight through down into that one. So I'm just going to set up a little jig and then I can clamp this into place. Lovely. So 4 of those all the way around on the line. All right, so now we have our internal piece. I'll just finish welding this. We'll let it cool down. It's still really nice and round. That's gonna get pressed into here. It's quite a nice tight fit, which is great. And then this one will slide on over like that. And then we'll leave a little gap, weld it, and plug weld this. So I will just finish off fusing that up. Okay, so it's still a little bit warm, but we should be able to, what I'm gonna do here, just gonna run a center line. All right, so that's giving me 2 little lines with about a probably 3 mil gap. So I'm gonna try and get this knocked in. So it's probably, to be honest, probably would have liked it to be a little bit, probably shouldn't have took that one blade width off and just hammered it in there, but. So we line those up. We got a nice root pass. We can do a filler, even a fuse afterwards if we want, and then we got those to fill, so. I think this will be perfect. So I'm gonna take it over to this side. We're gonna set it up in a jig, and then I'll show you guys how I'm gonna weld it. All right, one thing I did consider is if I were to put these together and leave a small gap, that gap lengthens this drive shaft. So I needed to make sure that I went and took whatever, whatever measurement I took off, utilize that as your gap. So I went and took 3 mil or 4 mil off. So I know that, or 3 mil, sorry. So now I know I can use that as my gap and this will stay true to the same size. So, and what you could do too is I could just lightly tack this, which I may even do, and then fit it in the drive shaft to make sure everything is gonna fit properly, which is an excellent idea. So that is what I will do. I will tack this, we will fit it, make sure everything works, make sure I can get the little C-clip down onto the groove here. And if that all works out, then I can pull it all apart, weld this thing up, stick it all back together, slide it on in, then we can do the radius rods. All right, so what I'm gonna do is actually remove the rear end from the frame and then just stand it up here so I can pull this torque tube off. We're gonna slide down that drive shaft, make sure it's gonna fit properly. And then if all goes well and we can slide down and get that speedo gear on with the C-clip and everything locks into place and it should be as it is, then we will pull it all apart and weld this thing fully, install it, radius rods next. Let's go. Okay, so 2 small little tacks on there. I believe this measurement is, well, I'm hoping it's exact for what we want it to be, but this is why we're gonna double check this. And if I need to, I can just grind those little tacks off and we can move this whatever way we need to. So at least I can kind of have a bit of a reference point off of if it's not quite that close and work off that. But I'm just gonna take it out of this little jig. You know, even sitting this thing in a lathe and spinning it with a dial gauge and getting it like totally square. That'd be epic, but I do not have the means of using one. So what we're gonna do is get this thing down. That is where it will live. Now, got my bearing in there. I just stuck it back in, the old one. She is totally cactus, but at least for reference purposes, I can get this done. And then what we're gonna do is slide this on over. I can actually just tell you right now, because I measured the face of this and that is perfect. But let's just in case this wasn't the issue, the circumstance that we're trying to do. One thing too you want to make sure is that you do want to allocate for your gasket that does go between the torque tube and the center of your differential. So there is a gasket that goes in there. Some are thicker than others, but if you had, say, one that was a 1 mil thick gasket and you put it in there and then you try to get that C-clip or ring to clip down onto the drive shaft, it might not do so. So these are all kind of little factors that you want to think ahead of before doing any of this, or finalize welding it, sorry. So now that we got that, this is for our Speedo. So we're gonna get this drop down into place. We got our, oh no, wait, gotta put my washer in there. So I'm gonna drop that, and we'll get that set. Oh yeah. So I can already see that I can get the clip ring in there. And that ring I'm telling you about is this little guy here. And that slides down on the inside of the shaft and will clip down into there. So you just want to make sure that you got that in the right spot. Previously, from removing all of this too, I did take a straight edge, I stuck it on top, and I measured that little gap that is down in there to make sure that it was going to be the exact same. So I think on the one on the Model A was actually dead straight across, like it made contact to that and both edges. Whether or not it's any different to yours or mine, but it is, yeah, 1.5 mil. It was 1.5 mil before, plus when I put that gasket in there, it'll just lift it up a little bit, but it'll kind of still have room to get that C-clip on. So now that I know that that's all good, I will remove this, and then we will get the drive shaft stuck back down into the jig. I'll get it as square as absolute possible, with the means of what I have to do it with. I'll just pull that gear off. So that's there. Pull my little bolt out. That's my locating pin. And now we can set this in, weld this up, plug weld these little areas, make sure everything's good, stick it in, and hopefully it's naturally balanced by my welds, which it may possibly not be. Right, so here's a little close-up. And I'm just kind of working my welds all the way around and turning it as I go. making sure that I'm getting the rosette welds evenly all the way around, just to make sure that while I'm welding it, it's even rather than doing one full pass on one side to make sure, then helping it not bend. So all I'm doing here is just another pass. I'm actually laying down the filler rod, and I'm just actually kind of what they would call is walking the dog, I suppose. I got a number 8 cup on, so it's pretty difficult to get a nice, real consistent one. A bigger cup always is better, but it's just because where I've filled still could use a little bit more filler, so I'm just doing a nice pass over it. On the back side, it has kind of moved a little bit, probably because of the jig setup I had. So I figured out the area where it needs to be kind of shrunk. So I put a little bit more heat into that side, and it definitely has kind of pulled that way. So that's a bonus. Once this is done, then we can start working on these guys. So I'm still a little undecided whether or not I'm going to cut and relocate this maybe closer, or should I, cut a considerable amount out of these, then have to heat them up and bend them in. I'm unsure, so I think I'm just going to do this. Once this is finished, I'll install it, I'll put that on, and then we'll just kind of see what to do. So I've decided I'm going to move this. I have my nice little reference line that carries all the way through, so I can utilize that. I'm just going to cut this weld off, and we're going to move this up here. If it's nice and close here, then I don't have to take so much. I won't have such a drastic bend down at the bottom of the radius rod, and we don't have to take so much material out. The only thing is, like I mentioned, if I set you down for a sec, I just have to allocate to kick it up slightly, because this has got nearly a 15 mil difference between here than it is at the top. So this is going to drop down. So I need to obviously try and bring the radius rods up slightly in order to bolt to this, because of the amount of taper that this has. So the other option would be to leave this and trim those right down, which is totally another option. I really don't know what to do. I've thought about it. I think there's just a few different options, and I'm just not sure which is the best one. So I think I'm just gonna flick a coin and see what happens. So maybe I should leave that because it's in the exact stock location, and I'll just bolt it down. Then I have a reference point, and I just, fix the radius rods to allocate to where that is. So maybe I'll do that. What I'm gonna do is just put the internal drive shaft on, put all that on, bolt it down, and then I'm gonna decide. So let's do that right now. This is pretty dang straight as well. I was able to, get it as plumb as I can. And what I had done is just, it's still warm. If I can get you focus on that, and you can just see I just ran around and kind of just put a bit more filler in there. So just another big one. You can see there's lots of heat penetration in there, which is awesome. It was great that we sleeved it. So what I might do, put it down on. So that's good both sides. And what we'll do is stick this back on, bolt this down, and then we can move these. Okay, so I have decided for the 7th time, again, what I'm gonna do here. This is what I'm gonna do for the last time. I'm gonna cut it and do it. I'm gonna move this. I'm not gonna cut and shorten these and bend and twist and make sure everything's gonna work. I am gonna take this off. I'm gonna weld it right here. There's nothing that will need to be kind of done with. I just need to make sure that I don't put too much heat into this area so I can still slide that sleeve and bearing down in there. Now, everything else in here doesn't ride on that, so it should be okay. The uni joint comes in and slides in, that's all right. I think it'll be okay if I just stick it right here. I'm talking you through this as I'm thinking about it. So I'm gonna cut this off, gonna move this, then I only have to take out a real small amount out of here, which means I should be able to cut on this line, pull these out, trim this, pull them back, and pull this in and just bolt it down, and it's done. I don't have to do any altering here at all. And for radius arms, I mean, it's nice to have them as long as possible, so this is kind of another bonus. So I'm gonna cut this off right now and we're gonna move it, so I have to do it. Cleaned up. I just ground around the edges just so it was nice and clean to be able to get a nice pass on. And what I'm thinking, here, here, there, I don't know where. Maybe here, just to avoid any area where that would, I don't know. I might even just stick it there. Okay, so what I have right now, this is our little kind of setup that we are going to use. So this has to be welded to the torque tube, and then these cast bits have to be welded onto the radius rods. So what I'm going to do, I think I really like this position here. So knowing that, now I can make a measurement. We're going to measure off the back of the radius rod up. I'm going to mark this. We're going to cut both evenly. We're going to pull these in with a strap, get them lined up where we like it, clamp this down, clamp everything together, make sure it's all square, looks the goods. Then we will tack these onto the radius rods, fully weld those, and then we'll pull these in with the strap. I'll tack those down, the main part on the torque tube, then we can pull everything apart and weld it up. Well, I have a very good habit of not turning on my microphone when I'm doing something. So unfortunately, you missed this, but there wasn't really much you missed. What I did was I put the rear end up on the table, and I've just kind of put some chocks under it, leveled it all out, just making sure everything was square. And then what I had done was just stuck some bolts in. These were the existing brackets that hold the your mechanical brake rods. And I've put a strap across, pulled that in, and all that had done was just slightly pull these in, because they were very close anyways. They only almost had to come in just the width of them, really. Clamped this down, got these lined up, and we've done a little pass on each one. So I need to flip this right side over and do the underside, and then I can finish welding this piece here. So I got one little one right there. There's still enough room for the coupler. I did account for the seal that I have to put in there as well, but there's plenty of room, plenty of pivot. We shouldn't have any issues with that. It's not really even going to move that much anyways. It maxes out before it even comes close to that, so, which is a good thing. And to be honest, it was just a lot easier. What I can do, because these things, like if we were to take this bolt out, they're probably going to want to spring back. So what I think I'll do is I'll finish welding these up, and then I might just run the torch over these and just get them nice and warm. Not like glowing or anything like that, just nice and warm, and maybe they can kind of just relax a little bit into, you know, just naturally kind of cool down in this position, and maybe that'll take a little bit of the stress off them, but there's barely any on it. And it's funny, when I originally had taken them off when they were here, they did spring back a fair bit as well. So, you know, they still had about 100 mil gap between them, if not more, when originally they were sitting there. So it's, yeah, I think it'll do the job. And I'm really happy just that we didn't have to modify them too much, and I didn't have to pie cut and heat all this area up and bend them in to try and get them located back in the stock position. So thank you, Ray. Ray gave me a hot tip. If you guys don't know who Ray is, Ray Prue, he's an incredible fabricator. Unfortunately, he's not on YouTube, Ray, but he does have a great Instagram page, and we'll put his screen on there. But an incredible fabricator. He's just put a whole 32 roof onto a Model A body, and it just looks incredible. You'd have no idea. Yeah, he's an absolute wizard. So he's always really nice to bounce a few ideas back and forth, and he's always super helpful and willing to give you a good answer, which is great. So I definitely really respect his opinion. All right, so what I'm gonna do is get this thing flipped up over, finish welding these, and then we can get this thing basically back underneath the car.
All my money on pretty things, diamante shoes and all these diamond rings. Yes, I spend my money on these fancy cars, on a Jack in the Box and old trips to Mars. Yes, and I, and I ain't got no shilling left for me. Spent all my money on expensive clothes, on a mink fur coat. Then I bought a house that goes. Yes, I spent my money on a swimming pool, on a lot of things don't think I'll ever use. And I spend my money on these pretty things, and I ain't got no shilling no left for me.
So you can see the difference in height. So that needs to come down, you know, a fair bit from where it naturally was sitting up on here. That's dropped that 15 mil. Actually lower, it was 15 mil here, so down here is probably nearly 20, 25 mil. So that's what I was talking about, maybe heating up that area just to let them kind of relax. So what I'll do is I will probably put the strap back on, pull these down, get the pin back through, and then I'll just heat up those little areas and let it naturally kind of fall into position. But that's naturally what they were. So you can see that, wow, that is so hot. Ow. So that's welded on. Unfortunately, I didn't have 3.2 filler wire. I just had 2.4, which is kind of annoying. Or no, I only had 1.6, I believe, filler wire. I wrapped a few together with a drill. Someone told me to do it. It did work. But yeah, I think it'll be sweet. So I'm gonna put the strap back on, get this through, get this off, stick it underneath the dash frame.
Yes, I spent my money on swimming, on a lot of things don't think I'll mink fur coat. Then I bought a house that goes. Yes, I spent my money on a swimming pool.
All right, we got the rear end back installed. The drive shaft is shortened. Everything is fitting properly. I got this lower coupler all bolted in. The radius rod's nicely mounted, lots of clearance behind there. Everything fits really, really well. The one thing I haven't done that I was explaining to you is I am gonna just heat the top of this up slightly. So when it naturally cools down, it's gonna wanna pull that way. And what I want it to do is just pull slightly on both sides, just so where, you know how I mentioned it was lower, I just want it to not have so much stress on it where I've lifted those radius arms to be able to put that bolt through. Other than that, I'm really happy with kind of how it's turning out. Leaf spring still fits really well. Still got to pack it probably another four leaf springs, maybe 5, but that'll be kind of when I'm got it all together, and I'll kind of fiddle around with it because I still need to change out those shackles. I'm still running that little bit of ready rod through there. So what we got here, I have just kind of mocked up one of the 39 backing plates, and I'm just playing around with the drums. I got these from a mate, and they've actually kind of been re-drilled for the smaller Ford bolt pattern. So I need to press these studs out and then get some new ones. Need to still get this guy out of there. Got some brand new drums, which is awesome. So they'll definitely just go right on there when the hub's on and fit up, which will be great. So we'll have some good braking. But yeah, I think I'm still waiting. Hopefully a box will show up today. It's still early, so if the box shows up, I got all my bits for the front end, and then I can get that all bolted in as well. The only thing I don't have is a wishbone. So if any of you guys out there have a 32 wishbone, stock one that you'd be willing to sell, where I'm looking for one. Otherwise, I'll have to fabricate something up, but I was planning on not running split wishbones on this. So if anyone's got a stocky, that would be excellent. I could really use it. I have a few other ones I could possibly trade you if you're interested. But yeah, if anyone's got one, that'd be excellent. And then, yeah, once front end's in, we'll finish off the backing plates, drums for this setup, and then we can get this thing on wheels and tires and have it running and like a robot. Yeah, no, it'd just be really cool to see it sitting on the big and littles and see the overall, you know, what it's going to look like. So I'm really happy with it so far. I was able to score a bracket for the 32 pedals as well. So I got the bracket now. Now I just need to modify some pedals. If I got some somewhere, and I'll see if I can make them all work. So that'll be really good. And then, yeah, just kind of keep ticking boxes as we go. So it'll be exciting. So next video probably will be kind of assembling the whole front end, and I'll go right through it and explain kind of what I'm doing. Once that's in, and I'll just go back to the rear brakes, backing plates, put those together, show you what I'm up to there. Yeah. And then we'll get this thing rolling, maybe put the body on. Once the tires are on, then we can figure out where that's going to sit, like I've mentioned before. And then we can just keep moving forward. So it's coming. I'm excited. It's got the drive to get it done. We've got a few projects in here that we need to, you know, get rid of. So it'll be great. I'm looking forward to it. Moose Man, apprentice of the day, helping me. He's got his safety boots on, as you can see. Yeah. Right on. Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was pretty fun to do, actually. A lot of scratching of the head, and you know, as you guys watching me, I'm trying to decide what to do. It's all kind of just off the cuff. So it's especially with those radius rods, not knowing exactly where to put them, and just, you know, kind of made the decision, went for it, and super happy with the turnout. So make sure you guys check out the website. We still got those brand new long sleeve flame tees We've just put them on the website a couple days ago, so if anyone's feeling cold and wants a nice long sleeve, they're on there. All right, guys, enjoy.
Spend my money on these pretty things, and I ain't got no shilling or left.